Splatoon Raiders released to amazing user scores and is being widely praised, but does the game actually live up to that? Today, I'm going to do a full gameplay focused review. I will say when spoilers are going to be discussed, but the majority of this review is going to be spoiler free. That said, if you want more Raiders content, be sure to subscribe. I've been doing a Nuzlocke challenge for my first playthrough, and it's pretty interesting. Let's start by talking about the general gameplay. Raiders has a lot of concerns that it would feel like Salmon Run, but to me it doesn't. It's still closest to Side Order, since Salmon Run flows so heavily around its map design, unique night waves, and running eggs to a basket, none of which are really present here. Instead, this is about dealing with a variety of enemies with some smaller platforming elements thrown in, while you upgrade yourself in various ways and have relative freedom in weapons, levels, and more. So let's talk about each of these aspects. First up, the level design. There are 6 different types of levels in Raiders. The first one are crystal levels. You go on a linear path through a level, fighting through hordes to take a crystal, while each of those spawn a little bit of extra enemies. These levels are enhanced visually compared to other campaigns for the unique atmosphere of each island and even some terrain differences like ice or lava cliffs. However, I've honestly found the platforming elements of these to be kind of underwhelming. While platforming is almost never the focus of Raiders, there are some segments of these that are more platforming exclusive, and I felt that these were relatively underdeveloped. I especially remember this one ride rail segment that was just extremely long with very little to do. This is a mechanic that I've never found boring, even in objectively weaker Splatoon campaigns. So honestly, this is one of my few complaints. The crystal levels as a whole, I do feel suffer from this because the areas between each one are very rarely interesting to traverse through, and I really wish this was something that had more time being put into them. Another type of crystal level is the large crystal levels. These are basically your farming levels where you have a bunch of smaller crystals in an open area. You can go to each one and fight a horde of enemies. There aren't too many of these, they're important for farming levels, and they function pretty much fine. I like them. The highlights for me though are the dens and ruins. Dens are single floor areas centered around a boss salmonid, while ruins are 3-layer gauntlets with a spicy salmonid as the boss on the 3rd layer. These function well with a tight time limit and relatively solid arenas. I do wish they had a little bit more layout variety since a lot of them blend together, but they still function pretty well because it does tend to highlight whatever boss salmonid or spicy salmonid you're fighting, which does help out quite a lot. The next area from this are the dungeons, which are pretty hit or miss for me. These center around Octo Expansion style levels that focus around whatever gadget you're using, and depending on the gadget can go from pretty fun challenge to, okay, this is basically a tutorial. They never detract from the experience, even the weakest ones are serviceable, but there's definitely a gap between some of the ones that feel like really fun Octo Expansion levels and the ones that are kinda just there. Finally are the bosses. I'll save some of my thoughts for the spoiler segment, but what I will say is I do like the boss fights overall. I think it is a step up from most other Splatoon campaigns, so if you're going into it, I think it's something to look forward to. Next up is enemy design. I've said before this game came out, one of the biggest positives of reusing Salmon Run enemies is the potential for expansion with new concepts, and they delivered there. Most normal horde salmonids have variations like bomb-throwing cohawks or tong-holding ones, and some new basics that are ripped from Side Order like the sprinkler enemies. Some boss salmonids are also new like the salty tongue and smoker, and others I won't spoil here. And on top of that, every single enemy, even the basics, has a salted harder variant, some of which completely change their attacks. Finally, it's also worth noting that some enemies got reworked. Armored options like steelheads and drizzlers now resist damage instead of being immune to it. Enemies that had an emphasis on bombs like flyfish and maws now have a weak point, and other small changes like fish sticks having propellers. Generally, all of these reworks allow you to have more options to deal with them and enhance the design of the enemies. If that all sounds like a lot, it's because it is, and it's very needed. Enemy variety is the easiest thing to make this game feel stale with time, and if anything is probably the largest flaw with Side Order's enemy design. That very quickly got stale and old, and here, so far at least, I haven't felt that. Every change they've done felt really smart, and dealing with hordes always has a lot of variety. Salmonids already have a pretty good design when it comes to interacting with you or each other that make fights feel dynamic. Smokers can protect enemies, Slammin' can crush them, blowing up a steelhead bomb can deal AoE damage, and plenty more examples. This amount of synergy both with your own attacks or working with or against other enemies is part of what makes each encounter feel unique and add to decision making when dealing with a horde. Your ability to quickly strategize around whatever you're seeing is really important for a lot of the fights in this game, and a lot of these attacks are also really well done in terms of their transparency, which with how chaotic it gets in later stages is very needed. Even the more annoying aspects of enemy design are mitigated by how powerful your tools are to deal with them compared to normal Salmon Run. Speaking of those tools, this game introduces gadgets, replacing sub-weapons and it feels like a humongous upgrade. Since you're only fighting against the game and not other players, there's a lot more freedom for what you can do with the design of sub-options, and the game takes full advantage of it. Instead of just a bunch of typical bombs, you have a lot of things to help you fight in more creative ways. A mini zip caster, moving splashdown, a propeller that hovers you in the air, and so much more, with 15 of these total. Some can be a little bit more underwhelming compared to others, but pretty much everything has something cool to its design. There aren't any bad options. These gadgets are split between 3 different tanks based around speed, power, and tactics. Don't worry about committing to one because you're encouraged to swap between them to level them up, and they aren't really a huge grind. These do serve a purpose of allowing a bit more distinct play styles while still having a lot of options, and I especially like the fact that you can equip multiple gadgets in one. I can never go back to having just one sub, and it's one thing I really hope future Splatoon games implement. What makes the gadget shine even further though is the upgrades. I feel like a lot of the side order upgrades were a little bit bland, but a lot of perks in this one can completely change how a gadget is used. There's also a huge variety of them as you scale up and add throughout the game, and even by the time you get to endgame, there's multiple maxed out loadouts to each gadget. This means that even with tens of hours, the system stays fresh and innovative. One of the best things they've ever added to the series. Besides gadgets, there's a few other customization systems present worth mentioning. The relic powers are a system of various buffs you can equip more of over time. Some are simpler options like some stat increases when certain conditions are met, and others are more creative, like a mid-air jump that adds movement and works well with mechanics like squid roll. On top of that, you have a bot buddy, which can be called to you and you can jump off of it. It does some small damage, and unlike Side Order's Pearl Drone, there's not really many options to customize it, which isn't a bad thing here. You do, however, get to pick which bot buddy you have, which changes which showstopper you have, this game's version of special attacks. They're all pretty well balanced and will get more powerful as you play with each one. The tanks you use also upgrade into getting new utility that I won't go into, but is very fun. And lastly, you can also unlock arcade minigames, which is some cool side content, especially for those who missed them from Splatoon 1. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the game's weapons. Very few main weapons were actually brought back in this game, with all classes having 1 to 2 options outside of shooters, which even though they have the most, only have 3. This is instead made up for by having different versions of these weapons, such as ones optimized for better ink efficiency, fire rate, paint, or range, leading to more overall weapons, technically. For the most part though, I think that's fine. There's plenty of variety between the versions of weapons, and it makes sense for a game without things like gear to have more, kits or other smaller variations of existing weapons. I will say though, getting the exact weapon you want can be a bit more of a chore than it should be, especially late game where you want weapons that are 5 stars or primo. There's no exchange system or ways to get weapons without RNG at all. And again, for the most part, that's fine. You're supposed to be switching between multiple weapons, especially since you can only level them up by 5 until the very end of the game. But by the end game, it was really annoying. I've played this game for a lot, but I still don't have the main blaster I want to use, for instance. So I really hope there is something done to that. Also, look, I was originally going to talk about the story when writing this review, but yeah, there's honestly better people for this, and I want to focus more on the gameplay as I've gone on about this, and it's already fairly long. That said, it's time to dive into spoilers. Skip to this timestamp if you want to remain spoiler-free. 3, 2, 1, go. Overall, I really like the boss design of this game. There's a lot of visual spectacle and neat mixes between the phases. These fights can be quite long, but I don't really mind longer fights personally as long as they're done well with enough variance to them. And I think all 3 of the boss fights are notable in their own ways. As for other bosses, the final boss has 2 things going for it. It's possibly the best visual design of any boss in the entire series, and the enhanced cutscenes around it give it a sense of scale that I don't think any other fight has replicated. It also has a fantastic escape sequence for the first phase, and it really sets the mood. From here, I'm gonna be honest, I think the boss fight kind of fumbles. My biggest problem with this fight is you're not really ever fighting the boss. You're fighting hordes of enemies, and then the drill fights it. And that makes it kinda underwhelming for me. And this is the only boss fight that has this problem. In the first phase, that was okay since we were escaping, but after that, once I saw the more platforming focused segments, I expected something like the DJ Octavio fight from Splatoon 1, but it just doesn't have the sauce that fight does. The terrain in DJ Octavio's fight is constantly evolving with different variations and gimmicks as you progress through it that gradually get more difficult. That variety just isn't present there, and on top of that, a big part of DJ Octavio's fight is you are moving the boss. You are shooting things back at it, and that back and forth dynamic is what progresses the fight. There is none of that in this phase. You don't shoot your weapon at the boss a single time in the entire encounter. Now, despite all of that, I still don't think it's a bad fight. It is an amazing visual spectacle, especially for the first time you play it when you don't know what's going on. But when it comes to the actual gameplay, I find it one of the weakest. So, post-game, it introduces super spicy raids, some of which go up to level 80, and it ends endless mode with some other extra levels on the side. This allows a nice challenging grind with a lot more content, but eventually endgame is the endless mode. This is 3 levels at a time, similar to the ruins, with increasing difficulty. I really like them. It's fun to play through and see how far you can get, and it's really only hampered by some of the RNG grinding problems I mentioned earlier. However, for everything besides weapons, this gets a lot easier once you pass floor 100. Floor 100 is also home to extra cutscenes and a secret boss who is easily the best fight in this game. The difficulty is cranked up, the attacks carry some serious weight and scale behind them to match how powerful all the players are by this point, and in particular, there's this one attack that cuts out the sound, and dealing with that for the first time was incredible. I'm ready for a new attack. Run!
Yo.
So that hit like 90% of the arena. Overall, postgame gives a lot to do, and that really improves the lifespan of the game, which is necessary given this campaign is the only part of this game as a spin-off. Alright, welcome back non-spoiler people. Before I conclude, here's 3 smaller critiques that didn't really fit anywhere. This game doesn't utilize mouse mode. I don't really know why, and it makes me a little worried Splatoon 4 won't have it. Given how much I think the accessibility of the Splatoon series would improve with mouse controls, I really hope this is something the next mainline game doesn't forget. The amiibo value in this game is very low. The amiibos themselves are awesome and super well detailed, but all you get is an outfit. For the money it costs, I really hope you like the figure. I guess the amiibos aren't as important these days though. And lastly, there's no option for multiple save files. You have to make an entirely new account, which means if you want to play online with others for something like a challenge run, you need another account with NSO. So that kinda sucks. That said, with my smaller critiques aside, I think that Raiders is overall an amazingly well-polished game with a lot of variety and depth pretty much anywhere, and a lot of creative player freedom. While it does have things that are lacking, none of its weak points are really that big a deal. Nothing that stopped me from enjoying the game at all. A lot of people are giving this game high praise and even comparing it to Octo Expansion. While I'd like to rank all the campaigns one day, for now, I think Raiders fully accomplishes what it set out to do, and I can understand why the user reviews are so high. It's a very fun spin-off that expands horizons for what the rest of the series could be, and for just $50, that's a pretty good deal. But that's everything I gotta say. Let me know your thoughts on Raiders in the comments below, and I will see you all next time.